Welcome to our podcast. I am Dara, and this is a Tribex conversation. Today, I want to start a story that sounds like something that belongs to the history book, but it's happening right now in Nairobi and in a lot of places in Africa. Between 2019 and 2022, a company employed around 200 young African to moderate Facebook content. Their job was 8 hours a day, watching videos of beheading, child abuse, and SS and delete them before rest of us could see them. And that story of a company extracting labor from Africa while profit was flowing somewhere else, that's not something new. And it's a colonial story now with a digital interface. That's what we're here to talk about today. And my guest for the day is Mo Kasuku, the digital rights activist and a feminist organizer based in Nairobi, and she is also a 2026 Africa Future Lab Fellow. She is the force behind a lot of digital rights activities in Kenya. So, welcome to the show. Please tell us a bit more about you and your work.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dara. I'm really excited to be here with Tribe Export, and I love the work that you're doing. I think we have a lot of alignment. As you've mentioned, my name is Mo Kasuku. I am a digital rights activist and feminist based here in Nairobi, Kenya, and I am also an Africa Futures Lab Fellow 2026, 2027. And so my project is really going to be exploring digital workers' rights and the exploitation by big tech companies, and what this means for the future of work in Africa, and also trying to see the parallels with what is happening now and the colonial past, but still wondering if this really is the past, and of course, how workers can organize themselves for better conditions.
Talking about if that's the past or not. So, let's start with the past. So, in East Africa under British rule, right? And as far as I know, for an ordinary worker, it was not that jolly. So, what did you actually feel like? What was it to actually live within that system? And you know your history better. So, what tools the system were used to turn those people into actual laborers?
Right. So, under British colonial rule, something called the hat tax was introduced, and it was a levy placed upon each family with a quota. Like, you have to submit this amount of money to the Crown Trust, aka to Her Majesty the Queen. And but I think at that time when the hat tax started, it was some other monarch in the UK. So what happened was these levies, these tolls have been placed on families, and they have to work to be able to get this money to be able to pay their taxes. So how they were coerced into this is that you'd be arrested for loitering if you aren't engaged in some sort of work that has been prescribed by the colonial masters. So a lot of people were coerced into labor that they didn't want to sign up to, because they had like vast amounts of land, and they would get like their livelihoods from the land. They would practice like agriculture and trade, so they were doing their own thing, right? But the colonial under colonial rule, they were forced to work under conditions that they did not choose. They were forced to pick up occupations that they did not want, because this is the only way then they could earn money to pay to pay the hard tax. But now you see, people will be like, but nobody forced them. But they were circumstances forced them into this kind of work. And if you're gonna be drawing parallels to what is happening right now in Kenya, is that in Kenya, Africa, and elsewhere, where the global majority live, is that these tech companies based in the West, most of them based in the US, they outsource companies, like it's BPOs basically. So they outsource
Mhm.
them, and to avoid liabilities, and it's been working perfectly for them. So that's how I can draw like parallels. I know I've gone a bit far from what you asked me, but I was just trying to give like an example of what it was like under colonial rule and what labor looked like at the time. Yeah.
So Kenya won its independence in a while back. It's 1963, right? And so you were saying that the chain is still there. It's not as visible as it was before, but it just morphed into something else. And
Right.
how does do you think the history still shapes the way work is valued in Kenya?
Right. So when Kenya got independence in 1963, and I say independence in quotes because it was just nominal independence, we got a flag change and some semblance of self rule. But our political economy is still very much tied to like Western powers, like former colonial powers. And in this context, for example, with a lot of these American tech companies operating through BPOs in Kenya, uh, the parallels I make with the working conditions under colonialism and what is happening right now is that labor is extracted to benefit like colonial Western powers, right? The infrastructure of AI, of artificial intelligence, the basics were extracted from African workers here in Kenya and also elsewhere in the world where the global majority live. They would spend hours and hours and hours doing data annotation, doing content moderation to be able to make these AI tools work efficiently. And they were paid very dismal amounts of money, and they were also exposed to like horrific material conditions, horrific content that they have to like clean up. So there, the labor was extracted from Africans, and the benefits get to prop up all these Western tech companies, just like in the colonial times when Africans were forced to work in tea plantations, in coffee plantations, and all the coffee and the tea would go to markets in the West, and the money would stay with all these multinational companies. And Dara, not much has changed even in these industries: coffee, tea, flowers, all these horticultural products that Kenya is known to export. The working conditions have never changed. Have
Um,
never changed. The Africans are still working in very, very terrible conditions, and all the profits get to go to all these Western companies. And that's the same thing we are seeing with these technology companies based in the US, but outsourcing companies based here in Kenya to avoid liabilities. So to answer your question, no, it's been 63 years since independence, and the working conditions haven't changed that much. Yeah.
so I'll be a bit of a devil's advocate here, and there's an argument I have heard a lot of time. People say that if those Western countries didn't employ or give any work to the people of your country or some other third world countries, they wouldn't have anything to do and they would starve to death. So, how do you look at this statement that we hear a lot?
Right. Yes, this is an argument I've had so many times, that if it wasn't for these tech companies, then a lot of young people in Nairobi, in Kenya, wouldn't have these jobs. And the argument, and I saw when the first major controversy surrounding this BPO that was being outsourced by Meta to offer these content moderation and data annotation jobs. When the first scandal came out, I believe that was like 4 years ago. The argument on social media and across legacy media as well was that this amount of money that they are paying these data annotators, which is 20,000 Kenyan shillings, which is equivalent to maybe $160 or $150 a month, is more than the average Kenyan gets, and they should be grateful, which isn't that true because 20,000 Kenyan shillings in the city is barely enough money to get by. And I understand that a lot of young Kenyans are unemployed and that we have one of the highest unemployment rates in the world. However, we cannot let these tech companies just get away with anything. The reason they are using these BPOs to do their work in Africa and elsewhere in the global south is because they cannot be able to pay this kind of wages to like people based in the US and people based in elsewhere in Europe. So it's very exploitative, and I feel like if you give them an inch, they'll just keep taking and taking and taking and taking, and seeing how they make a lot of money from the literal blood, sweat, and tears of Africans and other peoples across the world who are doing this work, then it is only fair that these workers demand better working conditions, because no one person should have all be a multi-billionaire and not be able to pay workers living wages. Literally, they are the reason that your company is functioning so well. They are the reason that you are able to accumulate all this profit. So the least you can do is offer a living wage, and is also offering ideal working conditions where people get the mental health help they need to navigate such a difficult job. So, no, I don't think Kenyans or Africans or other workers from the global majority should sacrifice themselves and be able to take the scraps that are thrown at them in the guise of, oh, you do not have another job, so this is the best that you can get. No, when billions and billions of dollars are being accrued by these companies through the labor of people in the global south, it's only fair that they are able to pay their workers a living wage.
It does make sense. And as we're talking about Meta and other platform economies, so you use the phrase take feudalism, and how do you define this term, and why feudalism?
So the term techno-feudalism, I got this from the internet. I get it's linked to Curtis Sampo Yavin or something, I believe. And he was like, we are now entering the age of techno-feudalism, where we like, just to give people a little background on feudalism, is when the land was owned by kings and lords, and they would sit back and let other people do all the work because they own the land, and then they will give them scraps, literally food for survival and nothing else. And these peasants, they had to tend to the land. They had to they were tending the land, they were tilling the land, they were harvesting and doing all this food preparation, and all they would get was like meals for them and their families, and that's it. But do the royal families, do the lords do any work? No. So when you what techno feudalism literally means is that the workers do not own the means of production, and it's Silicon Valley that owns our data. It's Silicon Valley. We've literally built these companies through our data and through subscriptions, and a lot of the work they do is dependent on algorithms, which can only work through our input. And then you now have the tech workers who are doing the data annotation, and they're also doing um, the content moderation. But then you have Silicon Valley, these tech billionaires based in the West, who the only reason they have all the money they have is because they were the ones who owned these platforms. They are the ones who control the means of production. But you can't really say any of the Silicon Valley billionaires based in the US do as much as literal the people propping up these platforms. So tech feudalism is, they own the server, right? They own the company, but everyone else is putting in the work to make sure that these platforms work the way they are supposed to work. And that's not what a billionaire based in the US is doing. So they are the feudalist lords in 2026, and we are actually the peasants, and we are the squatters in their digital world. You understand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is the work that the nitty gritty of the work? I know the effect of the work that a lot of workers are doing in for Meta and other content moderation is really horrific. But a lot of our listeners wouldn't know like what actually those are, how bad those are. Can you share a few examples?
Right. Again, back in 2022, when some of the earliest accusations were filed against Summersource, which is a BPO that was contracted by Meta. So it one of the things that emerged was that this is clear textbook trafficking, like human trafficking.
Wow.
And this is what used to happen is that Summersource would advertise these jobs, like in other countries too, not just in Kenya. They were advertising jobs for like translators, for example. And one of the stories that emerged was that so a job was advertised in Abuja on content moderators, Hausa speaking. So, Hausa is one of the main languages spoken in Nigeria. So, they were looking for Hausa speaking translators to work for a tech company. Literally, the advertisement was very vague. It
Mhm.
just said that it was looking for translators to work in a technology company. And a lot of people applied, and they were asked if they were willing to travel. Mind you, these are very young people, 22, 23, being asked if they want a job that enables them to travel. So it seemed very exciting, and a lot of people applied. So they were told they are going to be based in an office in Nairobi. So they fly from there. They buy them a one-way ticket to Nairobi. That should have been their first red flag. So they buy them a one-way ticket to Nairobi, and they tell them they are going to be working for a technology company. They have not mentioned what this
Mhm.
technology company is, and they've been told they will be doing translation and transcribing for this company. So they are taken to this place, and mind you, they are not given work permits.
Oh.
Yeah, they are told to sign this NDA, and it's like 10 pages long, and they do not have a lawyer. They also just, so they sign it. They sign this contract and they sign this NDA, and they're taken for a training, and they're told that you are being paid by the hour
Yeah.
for 9 hours a day. So you really have to put in the
Oh,
work because you're being paid by the hour.
yes.
And so when they start this work, the training seems pretty simple to be able to read whatever is coming on your screen and be able to translate it as fast as possible. And if it violates the the terms and conditions of this tech company, again, Dara, they had not mentioned what this tech company is. And so they're on their laptop, and it's like some sort of tokens that are sent to them, and they're told they have to deal with the tokens as fast as possible. So a picture pops up on your screen, and it's something very horrific, and you are supposed to do like data annotation and translation for that, and like mark it as green, which is good to go, or as red, which is perhaps something that violates. So they quickly caught up that it was Facebook they were working for, but they were told they shouldn't be discussing that. And so you spend 9 hours a day. And mind you, this was back in 2022. There was a lot of violence in northern Nigeria,
Mhm.
and a lot of, like doxing and all these terrible things happening on social media. So you see what is happening at home, but you can't really contact your family. And
Yes.
you see all these horrific things like 9 hours a day. And then you clock out and you go home and you do this 6 times a week,
Six
like
times a week.
Monday to Saturday, with zero like psychological support. And also, you've now clocked that you're working for Facebook, but why is everything so mysterious and everything? So like it also just gives you anxiety, right? Because why is everything so mysterious? And then you realize that you don't even have a work permit.
Exactly.
So it's like you've been trafficked to this country. And also, if you wanna quit, you can quit. But if you wanna leave the country, how are you gonna explain to immigration that you are given a visitor's visa that was only 30 days valid for only 30 days, but you've been here for 6 months now?
Yeah.
So you're essentially stuck here in the country, and you don't also have enough money to fly back home. So you are forced to work for this organization for as long as possible to be able to buy your way back home. And then if you want to quit, they tell you it's okay, you can quit, but we have all your documents, and you signed this contract where you said you're gonna work for us for 1 year. And if
Mm.
you aren't we if you can't work with us for 1 year, you have to pay us. So essentially they are stuck in this job. And earlier in the discussion we had spoken about how Africans were forced to work for these colonial masters. And you see, that was 100 years ago, and
Yeah.
now in the year 2026, in the 2020s, not much has changed. Yeah.
Pretty much the same playbook. And on top of that, they were young. And
Right.
the way the timeline was designed, by the time you figure out what you were doing, your visitor visa would expire and you're essentially trapped. So
You're essentially trapped. Yeah.
that's shocking. And your work, right? Digital rights, Matani. What are you guys doing to make sure that extractive tech system are exposed, and how you're making sure workers' rights are upheld in your country?
Right. So when digital rights mtaani, a bit of a background, like how this all started, is that back in 2023, early 2023, I believe, there was this news, and my sister was the one who came up to me and told me that her friend has a job at the mall, and she's been contracted by this company called WorldCoin. So WorldCoin was trying to get Kenyans to sign up for like a digital currency wallet or something, and that for you to access it, you'll need to scan your iris, which is a major, major, major red flag. But um, they were promising people like money. It wasn't that much money. It was like 2,000 Kenyan shillings, which is yeah, roughly $15. So they were promising people like $15 to sign up for this digital wallet thing. Later, I found out WorldCoin is owned by Sam Altman,
Um,
ChatGPT. So they stole a lot of uh, biometric
data.
data from Kenyans. But that's when I really became passionate about digital rights. And this was also around the time I had watched The Social Dilemma. I think it was on Netflix. And I thought it was really insane just how much these tech companies get away with, and what happened to Kenyans with the WorldCoin saga. It just like really inspired me to start doing a lot of work and research around digital rights. So uh, the digital rights community outreach program for this feminist organization I co-founded, but I'm no longer there. We were doing like community. We got some resources to do community outreach on digital rights, and so we would go and try and brief people on digital security and all that, and how to not sign up for WorldCoin. But then again, my things just kept evolving, and I was going to these spaces and meeting people working in various sectors of the tech industry in Kenya, and I came across these data labelers and content content moderators, and I was like really horrified by what they were telling me about their places of work and the conditions that they have to work in. And that's really just start something in me, and I've been now like supporting with community outreach for many of these organizations based in Nairobi, like Tech Workers Movement and Data Labelers Association. They've both done like really amazing work to start these organizations to fight for workers' rights. So I've been helping them with like community outreach and media pitching and just trying to get attention to their cause. So yeah, that's a background of digital rights mtani, and how I came how I came to work with a lot of these tech workers, and why this is very important for me, and also for the work that I am doing with Africa Futures Lab. Yeah.
So, because you're working with a lot of smaller grassroots organizations, can you give us an idea about how those organizations are working right now? What steps they're taking?
Right. So a lot of the outreach is done through like grassroots communities, because they were the ones who were in a like a really precarious position and were exploited by these tech companies to give away their biometric data. A lot of these young people working as data labelers and content annotators, they are from, of course, economically precarious positions. And so it just made sense to work with grassroots communities, because they are the ones really being impacted by the extractive nature of these technology companies. And it's amazing to work with grassroots communities, because they seem to have a better understanding of the political economy in Kenya and why certain things are happening. And I love that uh, they are not doing this for what Gen Z would say the bag. They are not doing it for clout or attention, because this is really, really their lives at stake. So
Mhm.
through the grassroots movements, we've been able to see organizations such as Data Labelers Association of Kenya, which was formed by former SAMA workers, and most of them are from these grassroots communities. So it's always very encouraging to see them put in the work, organize themselves, and they are not just like passive victims. They are really working towards changing their material conditions. And I really enjoy and I'm in solidarity with these grassroots communities. Yeah.
Nice, that's exciting. Another question that came to my mind, that the rest of the worlds are starting to know about the resource extraction from Congo, right? And but they're still not aware of the mental resource extraction or human resource extraction from other African countries. So, what should we do, like, to make sure that everybody knows about the reality, and what should be the initial focus for people who are outside Africa, who are somewhat aware of what's going on?
Right, right. I think, I mean, like people, thanks to the internet, people have been able to learn uh what to learn about the conditions of people in Congo, who a lot of the raw materials, the coltan and whatnot,
Mhm.
are extracted from Congo at a very high price, and high price is the loss of lives. Literal genocide is happening in Congo because these materials have to be extracted to build the infrastructure of tech. And a lot of curious people and people who are really seeking knowledge have been able to learn about this through the internet. So I think what like digital rights activists and me as Mo, and anyone with goodwill should tell people, especially in the West, who've benefited immensely from the extractive nature of the tech industry, to understand that getting the latest iPhone might seem like a status symbol, and telling us about all these nifty things that your phone can do is all well and good, but you really need to know that it comes at a price, that there've been a lot of lives that have been lost, and a lot of exploitation and extraction, and awareness isn't enough. Like it should be compelling to people in the West, in the center of the empire, people
Mhm.
living in Silicon Valley, to ask themselves if they really need an iPhone every year, and why like planned obsolescence is not only terrible for the environment, it's also terrible for your pocket, because there are some people who will only understand how terrible some things are if it affects their bottom line, if
Yes.
it directly affects them. So buying a new phone every year isn't economically sustainable or easy on anyone's pocket. So they should be the ones in a better position to question planned obsolescence, because they buy a phone at least twice a year. And what are the implications of that? They are, like I mentioned, they are in literally at the center of the empire. They are closer to Silicon Valley and closer to all these technology companies than most of us. And then they should be the one asking, why are children dying in the Congo for you to be able to extract these resources and make these like enormous profits? And what does that mean for me as a consumer? Am I also being complicit in the suffering of others? And it will require a lot of like soul searching and critical thinking on why this is all very wasteful. And even if this because I am not against technological innovation, but at what cost? At what cost? If the people in Congo gain nothing from all this being extracted, and if their children have to skip school to work in their mines, and if this coltan mining is detrimental to the environment, and also if we are going to continue to making these technological companies rich and rich by the day, is this really serving us as humans? So I would like people the world over, and especially in the West, in the empire, to really like question where the things they value so much, the phones, the PlayStations, and all these various tech gadgets that they have, like, to investigate the source and see if this sits right with them, and if it doesn't, like, what they can do to make the situation
Yes.
better.
Makes sense when you are hit quite hard for them because you know money matters, and if they see that exploitation is causing them loss in place of profit, they'll be more willing to be more ethical. So it's kind of like forcing their hands to be more ethical and more aware about the environment and sustainability and everything. That that's a great approach that you mentioned. And the other thing I'd like to know, like, what are the challenges you are facing right now?
Right. I think the greatest challenge has been just community organizing and outreach, like, around this issue. And like, recently I've been trying to get some of the employees that were recently fired by Samasos to share their stories as part of the series that I'm working with a couple of people in legacy media on tech workers' rights. And I wasn't able to reach any of the recently affected workers, and it's because many of them have like slap suits by the company, like they shouldn't speak about anything because they signed these NDAs. So, Dara, there's a culture of fear around speaking up against this, because people are like, some other BPO is gonna open or set up shop in Nairobi, and I also need that job, and I don't wanna be blackballed in this industry. So, I know that I spoke on the bravery and the hard work that some of these workers are putting in their grassroots communities, and I mentioned that a labelers association. But I think my biggest problem is just bringing ordinary regular people together to really like speak out against what is happening, because they're literally going up against the most powerful technological companies in the world, and there's a lot of um there's like a fear of culture, right? And also some people are in it to build their careers. Like, some people haven't interacted with any workers at all, but you see them on LinkedIn and positioning themselves as somebody who's speaking on behalf of the workers. So that's also something else that scares me, that I like doing this work, will I be swallowed by the seductiveness of careerism to be able to speak at these huge events and being flown all over the world at the expense of workers? So yeah, so in conclusion, I think it's just the culture of fear of speaking up against these technological companies, or doing anything that might might bring to you unwanted attention from these tech companies. I don't want to speak on behalf of people and like tell their stories or even get into detail, but there's been very scary stories of workers speaking up, and it doesn't really end well for them. So I guess the biggest challenge is
Mhm.
just a legitimate fear of these tech companies. Yeah.
So the fear is real. It's not
The
like
fear is
they're,
real. It's real.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And the people who got recently fired, and you reached out to them. So I was wondering, what the executive level employees, or were they just data labelers? So were they directly affected or traumatized by their experience?
Right. So I haven't gotten some of the details, but like majority of the people who are laid off were the ones doing the actual work, the data labeling, the like data annotation. So they were the ones who like were the lion's share of the people who are laid off, but I'm not so sure about if like people in like executive positions, managerial positions were also let go of. But for sure, majority of those who were sent home were like the data annotators and content moderators.
So um, one question that arises, if you mentioned one of the reasons they don't want to speak out is they want to get another job on in the same VPOs you mentioned, right? So are they willing to go back to the same jobs that had brought so much emotional turmoil for them? Will they be looking, or are they hoping for a better opportunity in a better organization with, less stress or extraction?
I mean, of course, everybody wants better for themselves. People are hoping that better jobs will come their way. But Dara, there's also just some sort of very unfortunate acceptance of their conditions because this just takes me back to the conversation we had earlier at the very beginning of this conversation, how Africans found themselves in like positions and jobs that they did not want, but
Mhm.
kept doing them anyway because they had to survive under this colonial
Yes,
system. And these workers in the year 2026, of course, they do not want to work in such conditions and they hope for better for themselves. But if they were to be called back and asked to take back their job tomorrow, Monday, majority of them unfortunately would because of the material conditions we are living in, because we are living in a hyper capitalist country, and because we've now essentially been trapped in this cycle and in these jobs. And you can go and ask the miners in Goma, in Congo, if they wanna do this job, they would say no, but they
they'll
really
have to.
don't have a way out. Yeah.
So, and also the psychological, physical effect of the work they're doing, right? So those are still not fully tracked, not fully understood. So even the people who are doing the work, they don't know the kind of PTSD or a kind of effect, psychological or mental effect that will be lingering on for a long time, even if they're not working or if they're even working there, and how it might affect their personal life too. So there's that still the unknown aspect of it, that the worker don't even know what's happening to their brain chemistry, right? So that's also there.
Right. They have to live like a lifetime with the psychological effects and also physical, Dara, because a lot of them are only allowed a 20-minute break in in a 9-hour shift. You're
Wow.
supposed to go and use that 20 minutes to go to the washroom, to have like your quick lunch. So sitting for 8 hours a day um, under surveillance because they have to do their work on camera also, which is another very strange thing. So they develop like long term physical health issues and also psychological issues, being exposed to these very violent videos um, every day, Dara, by the hour. I don't think that's normal. And
Not
they are offered absolutely zero support. So, can you imagine the damage that has been done, and that these people have to continue working in this like digital plantation? And like back in Congo, in Goma, in the coltan mines, people are getting these lung diseases. They are being forced to work with very crude tools, and they hurt themselves, but they just keep going and going. And the physical toll on their bodies is detrimental, and they're gonna have to live with this perhaps for the rest of their lives. And so these workers working here in Nairobi for these BPOs, they also have to live with psychological trauma for the rest of their lives, and that's very dangerous for society, for somebody to
yeah,
be exposed to the most gruesome things 9 hours a day, 6 days a week. That also has implications not just for the individual but also for society at
society.
large.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. People who are desensitized to violence
Mm-hmm.
can commit violent
Yeah.
acts. So that's alarming. Let's move on to a bit more of a positive thing. I really want to know, like, what the resistance to this extraction is looking like in grounds, and what are you guys are fighting for, and how.
Yeah, like I had mentioned earlier, I love working with like grassroots communities who've been able to start like associations like the Data Labelers Association and various, because you see, Dara, here in Kenya, the trade union movement has been highly compromised. Trade unions they work very closely with the state, and they haven't been able to show
Mm,
support, or rather enough support for like these tech workers in Kenya, because this is a fairly new line of work. These are like digital jobs aren't traditional jobs, so it's been really um, such a task to get the trade unions here to care. But what I find amazing is that just how much work and attention these tech workers have been able to like get the attention. Um, you see legacy media across the world reporting about conditions of African tech workers here in Kenya, and it's because they put in their work. They made like their voices heard. They've been speaking about this and have been going against like these really powerful tech companies, right? So I think
yeah.
that like I find that to be very powerful. I find that to be very inspiring and amazing that tech workers with very little resources going up against powerful companies in the world have been able to start like some sort of mini revolution in Africa, and encouraging tech workers the world over to speak up for their rights. So I find that to be amazing. Like it's not just them being passive victims, and it's not them shrugging their shoulders and saying it is what it is. I mean, they still have to work for these organizations, but the more they keep speaking up, the more awareness they build. And to me, that's a good job that they are doing. Yeah.
So the other question is, right now, the way the whole system is structured.
Mm-hmm.
So they are using the human resource, they're using the natural resource as raw materials to build up their empire, the tech empires. So, what do you see how we can transform from being raw materials to becoming more like the refinery?
Yeah, like as Africans, and I mean, I guess other people across the global majority countries, we've never really had control. and self determination of what to do with our resources. And I think that and I know this is controversial and not many people might agree with me, but it's very imperative that countries across Africa nationalize their resources. The first thing is nationalize all important resources and not leave them in the hands of so-called private investors who exploit the people, who extract all these resources without paying their fair share. And we are told that they are investors and that they are bringing jobs. But we own the land, we own the resources, and I am not really a fan of calling it human resources because it always sounds a bit icky to me to kind of reduce people as resources.
Resource.
But the labor that the people offer is invaluable, and the materials being extracted are extracted at a very high premium, and the price we pay is people die and they lose their land and there's environmental degradation. So I think it's important that we nationalize our resources so that we can have much more control over who gets what and how all of this is like sent out. And if it means that for a couple of years no mining revenue is gonna pass through the countries,
Mhm.
then I think it's okay until we get our house together. Because even as it is with everything, with all operations running, with the mines, the BPOs, there's very little that the people are getting from all of this. So I think number one would be to just nationalize our resources and also make trade unions really work for the people, because without um, without the workers, none of this will be happening, and people will be like, "Oh, AI is gonna replace you," and but they would still need like human intervention alongside AI, and you're still exploiting the workers even with your AI takeover. So, yeah, two things, Dara: nationalize like the mines and all that, and also build stronger trade unions to
Anyway,
protect the workers. Yeah.
so nationalizing raw materials is a strong call, right? And do you see any countries moving towards that?
Um, yeah, I've seen, I don't know where they got with that, but I saw Botswana like revising their terms of engagement with these international mining companies, and also trying to get a bigger stake for their country, a bigger stake of control over these mines for their country. And it was, of course, was very controversial and very heated for these companies supposedly investing in Botswana. But it's kind of scary to see the visceral reaction against having these mines under state
Yes.
control. I was actually really scared for Botswana because the backlash was
You
very
might get
intense, and
you
they
might get
weren't even
some.
asking to nationalize their mines. They were just asking to have much more a
Yeah.
bigger stake of control in this mining industry in their own country. So it could be just me being idealistic, or not being able to be like not having a proper understanding of how mining companies work. But I am asking, we haven't tried this before, why can't we try it? Like, and if the answer is that, oh, it's very difficult and almost impossible for African countries to nationalize their mines, then it's a great opportunity for questions to be asked, like, why can't African countries have a control over their own resources. I'm
Yeah.
really looking forward to that conversation where now the world has to answer why we cannot nationalize our own resources. So I am for that. I don't know how soon that's going to happen or if it's ever going to happen at all, but I think a conversation should start, and I think people should monitor the the response or backlash to this and start asking questions like why are European countries against African countries nationalizing
Exactly.
their own resources? Why are foreign companies very concerned about what a sovereign country does with its own resources? So these are a lot of conversations to be had around
Yeah.
this.
And most of the time, when a country moves towards nationalizing precious things, they get a dose of revolution, leaning towards the global agenda in place of that national interest.
Right.
So,
We've seen what has happened to countries that have told the empire no to oil extraction and that we are going to
yes,
nationalize like our oil fields and stuff like
yes,
that. It has been not the best, but I feel like we we have to dream bigger. We have
exactly.
to have an imagination for like a better world for ourselves and for our like future generations. And I think people should just believe like a lot of people in the 40s, there was also discourse right after World War II. There was also a lot of discussion in African countries of pursuing independence. And some people were like, oh, what are we going to do without the white man? What are we going to do without him being able to show us like this or that? And some people were like, you need to have like you need to really expand your imagination, and you need to believe that we're gonna be able to just do our own thing even without like colonial intervention. And the result has been varying after getting nominal independence. And I know things are not perfect on the continent, but that doesn't mean that we should have like colonial nostalgia or wanting to go back to that time. So even with um, being able to control the resources, people will be like, oh, I don't think these Western companies are going to allow us to own our own resources, but that's because you are limiting your imagination. So I need people to have
Yeah.
like a broader imagination of what the political
Dream,
economy can look like.
dream bigger.
Dream bigger, exactly.
Uh, Wrapping things up, if you could ask, that's a one thing to a person living in Toronto, London, or San Francisco, or wherever in the world, something they could do today or next month, what would that be?
I think it would be to speak up, to like really speak up and not just be like passive consumers of whatever it is that is thrown at them by these tech companies, whether it's a new detrimental app, whether it's AI being them encouraging you to replace teachers with AI, or releasing a new phone every 6 months and making you buy a new phone every like year, is to literally speak up and have these conversations. And it might seem very um, inconsequential to speak up, but it is this speaking up that has brought attention to the genocide happening in Gaza, right?
Yeah,
It has been happening for decades, but this last 4 years, just through people speaking up, we've been able to see action. Might
yeah,
not be enough, but like people are genuinely concerned about the the genocide happening in Gaza, and how it how all of this is linked to everything else
Yes.
that is happening in the world, right? We are not living in isolation. Something that happens in Gaza is also something that affects people in Nairobi, right? We are all
Yes.
under what, how can I put this? We are all under the mercy of the empire. But if we live in silos and if we don't
Mhm.
speak
Mhm.
up, then we continue to live in some sort of illusion that everything is fine when it's not. So, speaking up and having these conversations takes little effort. So,
Yes.
speak up, have these conversations, because your role might just be the speaker, but through having these conversations, some other people are stirred into action, right? They
Yes.
start unions, they boycott, they look for alternatives because they've been hearing these stories over and over again. So don't be silent, don't be complicit, don't be passive, speak up.
Mhm.
If somebody else wants to go the extra mile and do something about it, then well and good, but we should be having these conversations as often as we can.
Yeah. Totally agree with you. Like small steps do have tremendous effect.
This isn't a call for international solidarity with workers of the world, international solidarity with people of the global majority, because it's us who are building this infrastructure. It is us who are benefiting the least from all of this, whether it's in
Mm.
Kenya or Bangladesh, the conditions are the same. And
Yes.
international solidarity with people across the global majority countries would really, you never know what is behind like the next step, right? And we need to,
Yes.
as I said, expand our imagination. So like calling for like international solidarity with people from Kenya to Brazil to Bangladesh might seem like far-fetched, but it's because we are not expanding our political imagination. So I
Yes.
believe that as people of the global majority, expanding our imaginations of the like political economy would really go a long way.
Thanks for showing us what's behind our platform, what makes them run. And you reminded me about like we should listen to the workers, think bigger, and hope for a better world where things are not as dirty and as corrupt as we have right now. I think we should also, as you mentioned, stop looking for convenience.
Yeah.
So if it's too convenient, we should ask who else is paying or with their sanity or with their blood, sweat, or tears.
And I am so grateful that you've given me an opportunity, like, to speak on this, and also to be able to connect with someone else across the world who also shares my politics and also aligns with the work that I do. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity.
It's been my pleasure. And also to add to the note, we should unite from down the Kenya to Brazil because the platform is connected. And because they are connected, the only way we could stand against it is by being connected ourselves.
Just to conclude, workers of the world unite, and global majority unity towards like a better future for all of us.